The Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Edge Boost. Edge Boost enables you to double your bet with no interest. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/edge to get started today. Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Wednesday, June the 7th, currently 12:34 on the East Coast. Here to discuss our NBA Finals Game 3 player prop picks. I know it's been a while since me and Chris have been back, but hey, we are officially back for the NBA playoffs, or in the NBA Finals, I should say. And then we'll get into offseason stuff as well. So the Propcast is going to be alive and kicking all throughout the offseason, also leading up to the NFL season. So great time if you haven't already subscribed to the Propcast, whether you listen on Apple, whether you listen on Spotify, wherever the case might be. Come join us with the journey. Hopefully we can put some money in your guys' pockets. But I got my guy here with me. Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing, my man?
What's up, Munaf? I'm good, man. It's weird nowadays, to only have basketball once, twice a week. It feels like
yeah.
All these days in between, dude, it's weird, man. So you have to just be think a little more disciplined, right? Either you take a loss and you just ready to bounce back, or you won and you don't want to give it all back. So the games coming few and far between. It makes you want to be a little bit more sharper with your analysis, and hopefully you can get it right the next game.
Yeah, man. It's the days in between these games feel like an eternity. I'll say that much, just because when we do get to the NBA Finals, we know that they're trying to maximize obviously the primetime spots when we talk about. Maybe like in the middle of the week where not much is going on, so people can tune in. Also, you have the Stanley Cup going on as well, so you're competing with that as well. But yeah, man, it's I know NBA. I guess we can say, at least for us, I know hardcore NBA fans. The league never sleeps. It's 365 days a year. I know with the games and stuff, it's only during the season. But when we talk about like player news and the NBA draft, summer league, free agency, things like that, like the league never sleeps. So. Just because the season's ending, that doesn't mean we're not going to stop the discussion about NBA players and things like that. So, like I mentioned, just join us here for the journey for the Propcast. But, Chris, we're on to Game 3 here. Kind of want to briefly touch on what the first two games, as far as maybe some player performances or guys that have kind of stood out to you within the first two games. Obviously, the series is tied right now, 1-1. Game 3 does tip off tonight in Miami. What's kind of stood out to you over the first two games here of the NBA Finals?
I think just so game one, was an absolute complete Denver spot, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you got coming off a sweep versus coming off a 7-game series. You got the altitude, flying into Denver, only like with 2 days rest at that. Didn't expect a lot from Miami in that game. Game two, we saw a little bit more focused, Miami Heat team, I think. And a little bit more rested, right? I don't even know if it was a focus thing. It might have just been a more rested thing. Executing their game plan. They shot the 3-point ball really, really well. And that's how you cap the Miami Heat. If you think that they're going to make 15 to 17 threes, you take them to win the game. But if you think that they're going to miss because, 3-point shots, there's a lot of, volatility when we're thinking about, 3-point looks. It's really just that simple. And I think we saw Denver a little laxed. In game two. I think I had read something, if it said they hadn't lost a game in like 30 days, because you got to remember they're coming off a sweep. So, just didn't actually I know Jokic said after they swept the Lakers, he was going to, go home and watch some horses race and get in the swimming pool, right? So they was just kind of chilling. They hadn't lost since the Phoenix Suns series. So I think, so those are the two games, individually. I think the one thing that's really stuck out to me, is is pace, right? Like Denver
Yes.
wants to get out and run, right? They want to go. They are one of the best fast break teams in the league because Jokic gets the rebound. He doesn't have to look for Jamal Murray or KCP to get the ball and push it up the court. He does it himself, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
most of the time creates cross matches because you're scrambling trying to get back, but Miami does a really good job of getting back. They're one of the best teams as far as allowing opponents points in the fast break area. So Miami mucks the game up, right? They did it in game one, they did it in game two, and I think that they're going to have to continue to do that in order for them to be successful in game three and in the rest of the games as well. So I think pace, I think looking at game two specifically, it was the slowest paced game that Denver has been a part of in the playoffs, and it was the second slowest pace of I want to say of the all of the playoff games in general. It just So game two was the Nuggets' slowest paced game of the postseason. I'm sorry, and the second
Yeah.
slowest paced game of the playoffs in general. So I think that's Miami's success. They want to get the ball. They want to use a lot of shot clock, try to minimize the possessions. I want to say Denver had a very few possessions as well. And hats off to Spoelstra. He's done a really good job on the defensive end, kind of taking those other guys away. Michael Porter Jr. has been struggling in this series, KCP as well. I think that they're executing their game plan. It's going to be interesting to see if Coach Mike Malone can counter that. Him and his coaching staff can counter that and get his guys, back ahead in this series because they always say, if the series doesn't start until the home team loses one, right? And we have that. So now we have ourselves a series.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing that I've talked about on the NBA pod as well, and then also when we got on with Sean and Ryan, is that I did expect the Denver Nuggets to play with a lot more pace, and I think that's something that Mike Malone has really preached to his players and his team, and that's really been their success during the regular season. Obviously, pace is completely different when you get into from going from the regular season to the playoffs because again the game does slow down in the playoffs, right? Because defense is tightened up more. You make those in-game adjustments. If something you excel at, the other team's going to try to combat it, and I think that's what you hit the nail on the head. That Eric Spoelstra has really gotten his guys back on defense. There's been spurts where Denver has played with pace and looked like the team that we saw during the regular season. I think the opening of that second quarter in game two was a prime example of that. When Jimmy Butler went to the bench, some of the starters were on the bench. Jamal Murray came back, and I think Jokic was taking his rest at that point as well. Well, Jamal Murray was taking command of the offense, and they were getting out and pushing with pace. And as the game kind of gone along, you saw that they were getting into half-court offenses and things like that, and that's like just getting into what Miami wants you to do, right? Because Miami, they'll make the adjustments. We saw it against Milwaukee, right? Like if they want to get out and run, they'll get out and run. And we saw a lot of high-scoring games in the round one against Milwaukee with Miami. But right now in the NBA Finals, I had the over in game two, and that was like pulling teeth trying to get that over. It got there, but I don't think I'll be betting another over in the NBA playoffs, or sorry, in the NBA Finals here for the rest of the way. But yeah, I think some of the guys that have kind of stuck out to me, I think we talked about Max Strus from game one to game two. Obviously, he was big, 0 of 9 in game one. Came back in game two, hit 4 3-pointers in the first quarter. After that, didn't do really much else. But Gabe Vincent, another guy for the Miami Heat who had a great game too. I think the one consistent player, and I thought this guy would be the X factor of the success for the Miami Heat, has been Bam, right? Bam has had a really good first two games. He's dropped 20-plus points in each of the first two games. He's gone over his PRA in the first two games, and the books haven't adjusted. Kind of teased to some of the player props we may talk about later, but and those are the guys that have really stuck out to me on the on the Miami side. I want to ask you about Jimmy Butler, man, because we saw in Milwaukee he had a fantastic series. He had a 50-plus point game there. Boston, he kind of did slow down, but in the moments that they've needed Jimmy Butler to step up and kind of put the nail in the coffin, he's done that. But at least in games one and games two, I don't know if I personally think that there's some type of injury factor, or there's also some type of fatigue factor, or that maybe he's just letting the game come to him. But what have your thoughts been about Jimmy Butler from the Boston series now in the first two games of the NBA Finals?
So I think whenever we think about a game seven, if I'm never wanting to take a player on that over in the next game, especially when you got to go to Mile High. Denver's been so rested. So I wasn't looking at taking Jimmy points in game one. It might have been a good look to take his under. No, he only had 13 points in game one. And then, game two, I think he was trying to be a little more assertive and a little more aggressive. He didn't shoot any free throws. That was a big storyline talking point at the end of game one. Got to the free throw line 5 times in game two, hit all 5 free throws. And he was more aggressive. He shot 7 for 19. So I think 19 shots is enough for Jimmy if they want to play winning basketball, in my estimation. So I think it's a little bit of everything that you kind of touched on. I think that he understands, as the rest of the team understands, that they don't want to have to rely on Jimmy to go for 35 in order for them to be successful. Yeah. It's kind of like the Jokic thing, right? I think the Nuggets are now 0-4 in games, 0-3, 0-4 in games that Jokic is going for 40-plus points or more. Yep. So it's a recipe for success for them. And I think, you talked about the Max Struses of the world hitting 4 threes. Gabe Vincent was another, big game for Gabe Vincent, 23 points, 4 for 6 from the three-point line. You mentioned Bam already, his 21. And that's the way that they want to play, right? If they have, I want to say 5 or 6 guys that average double figures, and they all kind of hover around that 10 to 12-point range. Caleb Martin, who hasn't been having that as great of a series, but Kyle Lowry and his contributions off the bench. Like, this team is a collective unit, And yes. I think that, I think we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I think that continues a little bit. I like the defense, in I think how difficult it's been for Jimmy to score, right? You have a bigger defender in Aaron Gordon that you can kind of put on him, and you just kind of daring them to, make those pull-ups, and they're really difficult shots. Most of them are going to be contested. Denver's also doing a better job, I think, because they have a lot more length, so they're just going straight up without fouling, because he does like to, get to the free throw line and beat some of those foul calls as well when he's trying to be aggressive and, kind of have his offense come to him, I would say.
Miami doesn't have the big sexy names as far as, we talk about role players, or not even role players, but, Jimmy and Bam. Outside of that, it's a collective group of guys that are playing with something with something to prove, right? Because a lot of their role players are guys that are undrafted, and they're trying to, not really make a name for themselves, but, just take advantage of the moment right now, the opportunity that they have in front of them. And I've said this, give me heart over talent any single day. And I think that's what's really defined this Miami Heat team as they made their run to the NBA playoffs and through the playoffs here into the NBA finals here. So we'll see, man. I think it's going to be a great series. We're tied up 1-1. We'll get over to game 3 here tonight, and we'll talk about our player props here in a minute. But before we get into our player props, let me tell everyone about the newest sponsor on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. That is going to be Edge Boost. Edge Boost is the world's first bet now, pay later Visa card. That's right, you heard it. Bet now, pay later Visa card. Edge currently offers up to $2,500 in betting advances, who can be extremely a valuable tool for your betting bankroll. And also in those opportunities where you need a hedge out, or if you need to get down on some extra money about a bet that you're very, very confident in, imagine what you can do with an increased bankroll. Get down on some of your favorite futures without tying up your bankroll for months. Double down on your favorite bets, like I mentioned, and even use it to create a middle opportunity or even a hedge opportunity. Look, if you're holding those Miami Heat future tickets, if you're holding a Denver Nuggets future tickets and you feel like you need a hedge a little bit, Edge Boost has you covered. Edge Boost isn't some sneaky loan shark. No, you don't have to worry about that. They charge 0% interest. Do you know of a way you can access more money to bet on your favorite bets without having to pay any interest? No more haggling your friends, no more haggling your family for that extra money to get down on some prop bets here, or even your favorite bets like I mentioned. Edge Boost can also be part of your responsible gaming plan, as you can set up daily, weekly, and even monthly limits across your betting accounts all in one place. So help support SGPN, grow your bankroll at the same time by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/edge to sign up. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/edge. Must be 21 years or older to use. Problem gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Chris, let's get into our player props here, my man. Why don't you lead us off with your first player prop for Game 3 of the NBA Finals? What do you got?
Let's go Miami side of the ball first. Let's give the home team some love. I do think that this is going to be a slower paced game, like we talked about as well. And I don't like to take a lot of overs, but I do see value, right? You talked about this Heat group being a collective group. We both have kind of talked about this Heat group being a collective group, and I think one of those guys that has been extremely consistent And, it's difficult to bet on these Miami Heat players because you don't know which one it's going to be at certain points and certain times. But Gabe Vincent has been extremely consistent. I don't think that this goes away at all. Caleb Martin was the guy last series, and it seems like Gabe Vincent has kind of, matched that production, or, we'll say production of what they need from him. So his point prop is 13.5 on some books, it's 14.5 on some books, just depending on how much juice you want. But I like Gabe Vincent to get either or, 13.5, 14.5. He's been fantastic in the first two games. You look at Miami Heat, most consistent offensive threat on the perimeter so far, averaging 21 points, 55.5% shooting, 15 for 27 from the field, 56%, 9 of 16 from three. That those numbers speak, real high volume. He's going to be out there. He had a plus minus of plus 22, which was a game high in game two, and his minutes have been extremely consistent. He played 38 minutes in game one, 32 minutes in game two, clearing this line pretty easily. And, I always like another barometer I like to use is if I can get the guy points for, anything close to what their field goal attempts are going to be, I'm typically pretty happy with that. And, he shot 8 for 12 in the last game, 7 for 14 in game one, and point prop sitting at 14.5, 13.5. So I like Gabe Vincent. Like I said, shooting the ball really efficiently. And I think that continues with him going back home today. I look for him to be one of the guys that we can rely on, for this Miami Heat team.
Yeah, I like Gabe Vincent as well, man. I mean, you talked about it, that he's been really good for this Miami Heat team throughout the NBA playoffs, and especially in game 1 and 2 of the NBA Finals here. I'll co-sign this with you. It's not one of my player props, but it's one of the ones that we did discuss on the NBA Gambling Podcast. As we mentioned that Gabe Vincent over on his points, or even if you want to take over on his 3-point shots, because most of his points have come from beyond the arc, at least in the first two games, like you alluded to. Going 9 of 16 from 3-point land. So I think that number as of yesterday was 2.5 at even money for his 3-point shots. He's made 4 each in his first two games here. So I think majority of his points are coming from the 3-point lane. But we've saw it in the first two games, Chris, that he can knock down the mid-range jump shot. He can get to the basket and get to the free throw line as well. So I think that if they didn't have Gabe Vincent, I don't think they would be in the NBA Finals right now. You say the same thing about Caleb Martin as well. Those two role players have just been absolutely phenomenal for the Miami Heat. So yeah, I expect Gabe Vincent to continue being consistent for the Miami Heat. I know there were some rumbles about Tyler Hero coming back for game 3. It reported before the NBA Finals started, but he has been officially ruled out for game 3. We'll see if he comes back for game 4, but man, that may just mess up the rhythm and the offensive flow for the Miami Heat. But Gabe Vincent has been absolutely phenomenal. No argument for me about Gabe Vincent here tonight. Over 13.5, 14.5 points, wherever you can find the best odds. All right, for my player prop here, Chris, I'm going to go to the player we had just discussed, Jimmy Butler. I'm going to take the over on his assist here tonight. And that number is currently sitting at 6.5. He's gone over this projection in each of the first two games for the Miami Heat. I believe in game 1, he had 7 assists for the Miami Heat, and then also 9 assists, I believe, in game 2 for the Miami Heat. And it's something that we talked about, that, is he a little bit more passive, or is he dealing with an injury that he's trying to get either his teammates involved, or, finding those open shooters as well. So I think that number one that we kind of saw in the first two games here, Chris, is that Miami has been able to get those open 3-point looks. In game 1, they weren't able to knock it down. We talked about Max Strus, who was 0 of 9 from the floor, but guys were able to knock it down in game 2. We talked about Max Strus, and that came out in the first quarter. God, who's the other player? Not Caleb Martin. God, I'm drawing a blank right now, but Duncan Robinson. There you go. Duncan Robinson, Kyle Lowry. Those 3 guys were able to knock down shots for them in game 2. And Jimmy Butler has really done a great job of finding his teammates and getting those open shots for his teammates. I think that there is going to be a game maybe later in the series, Chris, that Jimmy Butler takes over scoring-wise. But at least in the first 2 games, I think that continues here tonight, that even if he does have a great scoring night, he's been able to fill up the stat sheet, whether it's been rebounding or whether it's been assists, right? Of the last games, of the playoffs. He's averaging 20 points, but more importantly, he's averaging those 7 assists. He's averaging 6.8 rebounds as well. So he's gone over 6.5 assists in 3 of the last 4 games for the Miami Heat, dating back to the Boston Celtics Eastern Conference Final Series as well. So I'm at 6.5 right now. There's a little bit of vig on it, but I'm comfortable laying it with Jimmy Butler. So give me Jimmy Butler over 6.5 assists here tonight in Game 3 here, Chris.
I like him, I just kind of alluded to it before we started, right? And I was saying that I think it was a quote yesterday that came out on Media Day when they were doing the media for the Miami Heat, and Jimmy said something along the lines of, I understand that for us to win games and to be most successful, I got to be getting my teammates involved versus going out, and scoring 35 to 40 points. So I like him. I think he's the engine. Him and Bam, like you said, are the engine. If he gets into the paint, but it's not necessarily to try to score every time. He just wants you to help, right? He really wants you to bring another defender so that he can find the wide open shooter. And that's what's been extremely successful for them, like you said. So, going over this line 2 times on the road, with Miami's ability to shoot the 3-point ball so well in Game 2 on the road, I would, be crazy to think that they can't go out there and shoot the ball. I don't know if they shoot it as well tonight, but, for him to be able to go over his assist line, I think he had plenty of opportunity, and I wouldn't take the under. If I like Jimmy over his 6.5 assists as well.
All right, Chris, take us over to player prop number 2, my man. What do you got?
So let's stay with Jimmy, and this is kind of correlated to your play. I think Jimmy goes under his points. I think he goes over his assists, maybe even over his rebounds, so maybe the RA line. But I still think that, we may be searching for a while. We said it, right? We don't know if it's injury. We don't know if it's just schematics, right? Like, we don't want to get Jimmy that many shot attempts. We wanted him to find the other shooters, but I like Jimmy to go under. This points number keeps coming down. It opened at 25.5, and it was just a little bit of juice on the under. But now it's all the way down to minus 120. So it makes me think that people are actually betting Jimmy to go under his 25.5 points as well. I think that he knows, like we talked about, he's the key to winning is just, him not necessarily scoring, but getting the other shooters involved. I also think that Bam has the best offensive matchup. As far as, like if we need to actually go get a bucket, because Jokic is a little slow laterally, Bam's always going to have space. And with that space, he's able to shoot if he wants to. He's not being defended close, you know what I mean? So he's able to find the open, shooter as well, because, there's no pressure. There's no ball pressure on him. So I think Bam continues to have a really good offensive series, but I'll take Jimmy to go under his 25.5 points, thinking that, he finishes with, maybe 23 points. I also think the pace continues to be slow, right? So I talked about, the under. I do like the full game to go under, and I think it's correlated with Jimmy to go over his assist looks, because I think he'll continue to try to get everybody else involved. And also, under on his points prop. So give me Jimmy under his 25.5 today, under 25.5 points.
Yeah, I mean, look, it makes a lot of sense, right? The first 2 games he's gone under this points projection. Like you mentioned, that number keeps dropping. I think in the Eastern Conference Finals, that number was around 27.5, 28.5 for Jimmy Butler in those games. And maybe some of those games were going to be higher scoring, but I think we're expecting, at least I am, that it'll be a lower scoring game here tonight, or at least in Game 3. So until we see Jimmy, I don't know, I want to say break out of the shell that he's in, or I don't think he's in a funk. I really do think that it's either fatigue and injury related, but I think he knows between his ears that he doesn't have to go out and be that guy and go and drop 30 plus points every single night for his team to have success, because other guys have stepped up. And I saw a quote, and I don't want to, in so many words, he said that if the Miami Heat are going to win a championship, it's going to be on the back of Bam Adebayo. I think that's, in so many words, that's what he was trying to say. And I think, we talked about Bam a lot. We'll talk about him in a little bit as well. But I think that until we see Jimmy kind of get out of his funk, or he doesn't have to be that guy, I think he knows that we got to keep on taking the under. So I'll co-sign this with you. Jimmy Butler under 25.5 points right now for Game 3. All right, player prop number 2 for me. I'm gonna go with another assist prop here, and that's gonna be Jamal Murray over 6.5 assists. First 2 games, he's dropped 10 dimes in each of those first 2 games, 20 total assists so far for the starting point guard for the Denver Nuggets. And I think that, number one, we've seen that Denver has been able to find some open shots as well. And game 1, they were able to knock him down. Game 2, they struggled a little bit. Michael Porter Jr. has been a guy that has been struggling right now for the Denver Nuggets. But he's been able to find, when he does get out in the fast break, we'll see Jamal Murray, dish the ball out to some open shooters versus taking it himself. And also, I don't know how much merit you put into the question that Ramona Shelburne posed to Eric Spoelstra in the post-game presser after game 2, saying that, hey, are you trying to turn Joker into a scorer versus a guy that can facilitate? Because if you look at his stat box after in game 2, Joker only had 4 assists. But like you mentioned, he had 40-plus points in that game. And I think a lot of those assists are coming from a guy like Jamal Murray. So I think Steve Kerr mentioned this on Draymond Green's podcast, or I need to make sure I get my quotes, Greg, but that Jamal Murray's ahead of the snake for the Denver Nuggets, right? And I think that's the guy that you need to slow down to have success against this Denver Nuggets team. And I think that was a game plan in game 2, which, Jamal Murray, he's still going to score his points, but he's not going to be that guy that's going to put up 30 to 32 points per night like he had been previously. He can still rack up the assists. And like I said, in the first 2 games, he's done it where he's had 10 plus. I think that continues your night for Jamal Murray. I expect the role players to play a little better here tonight as well for the Denver Nuggets, whether that's Michael Porter Jr., whether that's KCP. I think we see more Bruce Brownmans here as well. So I think he's going to find those guys here, Chris. So I'm going to take the over on his 6.5 assists again here tonight for Jamal Murray.
Yeah, no way I could talk you up. I think he has 17 assist opportunities in game 1. And I want to say he followed that up with about 17 more in game 2. So like you said, a lot of those are assists to Jokic. This dude's shooting above 60% from the field. Why would you not give the ball to him, in decent scoring range? And I think we also it's bound to happen, I think, at a certain point, even, with the respect that we have to give to Miami's defense, Miami's three-point defense, because they are top 4 in the playoffs as far as defending the three-point line. But some aggression has to be coming for some of these Denver Nuggets shooters, right? KCP hasn't had I wouldn't say, a game that we kind of expected from him yet. And, of course, Michael Porter Jr., like you said, as well. So I expect them to be able to kind of find those guys as well. But we also know the most difficult play in the NBA right now to stop, if I think this is not even up for debate anymore, it's the Jokic and Murray pick and roll. And a lot of the times, Murray is running that pick and roll. He keeps the ball, and then he's dishing back to Jokic. Yeah. So no way I could talk you off playing this 6.5 assists. I think you actually could potentially ladder this to, if you want to get the plus money, take the 7.5 as well.
Yeah, I agree. All right, before we get into our best bets for game 3 of the NBA Finals, let me tell you guys about Underdog Fantasy. Best Ball Mania 4 is here, and Underdog is giving away $15 million in prizes. Look, for you fantasy football players out there, I know the guys on the network with Sean and Ryan, they've been cranking out Best Ball Mania drafts, fantasy football drafts for the upcoming season. But if you're not a fantasy football, draft type of guy or Best Ball Mania type of guy, check out the player prop parlays, man. They have NBA, NHL, and MLB player prop parlays. You can also get a bonus if you haven't already signed up over on UnderdogFantasy.com using promo code SGPN. You'll get a 100% deposit bonus of up to $100. Again, player prop parlays. If you want to take mines and Chris's player props, parlay them together, make some nice money. Maybe do it with a free $100 if you haven't already signed up with Underdog Fantasy. So make sure to check them out. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com using promo code SGPN, again, for a 100% deposit bonus of up to $100. Again, UnderdogFantasy.com using promo code SGPN. All right, Chris, let's close it out strong here, my man. Let's get into our best bets for game 3 of the NBA Finals. Why don't you lead us off? What's your best bet for tonight?
Best bet for the night, I'm going with the old saying, that in road games, your best players have to perform, especially when you got a game stolen away at home in the last one. And I think we see that from Jokic tonight. I'm on Jokic, I think there's a couple different ways you could play him, but for the purposes of the show, I'll go PRA over 50.5. This dude is, just over the playoffs in general, he's averaging 54 points, rebounds, and assists in road games of the playoffs. He's the guy that I trust. He's the guy that's going to be extremely efficient. He's shooting 60% on the road in road games. He's shooting 52% from the 3-point line in road games. He's going to play 40 plus minutes, barring any, kind of injury. I do think that, if you watch the breakdown of the Denver Nuggets at the end of game 2, Coach Malone alluded to Miami coming in there and still in the game, and Denver needing to do exactly the same thing. He challenged his team to be able to go into Miami and still a game. And when we think about the Nuggets being successful, Jokic is at the head of the snake, man. This dude makes the right play. He's going, his usage is going to be extremely high. He's going to either score or assist on a lot of those opportunities. And I don't think that there's going to be anything that Denver does, that Miami can do. He's also over this number in both games already in the playoffs in the finals against Miami as well. So, long story short, I expect Jokic to be Jokic. If in the over 50.5 feels like a tad bit of a bargain, even though, I do think Spoelstra is going to continue to use him in the pick and roll, try to have him in the pick and roll to get him away from the rim to kind of decrease the amount of rebound opportunities. I still expect them to be able to get rebounds. I still expect them to be able to score, especially if Spoelstra decides that they want to continue to play him man-to-man and not send any help. I think that we could potentially see another 40-point game as well. So point prop sitting at 28.5. I also think that's a good look. But and then the other thing I want to mention about the assist part, because you kind of got to break down all three. If in the 3 games where Jokic has scored 40, in the following games, I think it's 3 or 4 games so far in the postseason that he's going over 40. In those next games, he has had double-digit assists, I want to say, each one of those as well. So I expect Malone to be able to make the adjustments. All of the adjustments that Spoelstra threw out, as well as the shot making in game 2, is the reason why they won. Now I expect Mike Malone to be able to make the adjustments, be able to get some of those other guys involved, especially the ones that are struggling. I expect them to come out, run a few plays for Michael Porter Jr., KCP, let them see the ball, go in the rim. No matter if it's a backdoor layup, might not even necessarily be a 3-pointer, just to kind of get them in some rhythm. And then from there, you got to deal with Jokic the rest of the way, So yeah, over 50.5 points, rebounds, and assists for Jokic is the best bet for game 3 for me. What you liking today?
All right, for my best bet, I'm going with the other center to go over his PRA, man. Bam, over 32.5. That was right now at -105, or at even money. And I think the game the championship is going to be won on the back of these two guys. Obviously with Nikola Jokic, a 2-time regular season MVP, trying to get that first championship. And if they do get it, he is more than likely going to be the Finals MVP if Denver wins the NBA Finals. But I'm pleasantly surprised to see how well Bam has played, at least filling up the box score for the Miami Heat, because he's really been able to take advantage of the opportunity or the lack thereof defense from Nikola Jokic. And Nikola Jokic knows it himself. He's came out and said himself that he's not the greatest defender, or he's not the guy that can jump the highest. But, I mean, you take a look at the first 2 games here, Chris, what Bam has been able to do. He's over this projection of 32.5 in each of the first 2 games for the Miami Heat. The books haven't adjusted this number. It's still at 32.5. So game 1, 26 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists. Game 2, 21 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Game 1, he got up 25 shots. Game 2, he got up 14 shots. I think those shots are going to be definitely in double digits for Bam. And Bam has played a minimum of 40 minutes over the last 4 playoff games, dating back to game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. The last 4 games, 46 minutes, 43 minutes, and then each of the first 2 games of the NBA Finals, 40 minutes each. So when we talk about overs that we want to back, we wanted to take a look at number 1, shot volume for some of these guys, and then the number of minutes that they are playing. And I think for me, Bam checks both of those boxes right now. And I think that he's going to come out and score another 20-plus points here tonight. And like you mentioned, Chris, that if you want to just take his points alone, you can take that. I'm going to pull up that number right now. We'll see what that number is for Bam. I believe it's probably at
18.5, 19.5. I saw both.
Yeah, I see 18.5 -135 on DraftKings. So he's going to be able to rebound the basketball as well. We've talked about it a lot on the NBA pod, that if Miami wants to have success, they're going to have to rebound the basketball and have more of an effort on that end. we saw the adjustment that Eric Spoelstra made by putting Kevin Love into the starting lineup in game 2. But Bam has really been that guy. He's been the more consistent guy for this Miami Heat team. And I think personally, Chris, that if Miami Heat do go on to win the NBA championship, Bam is going to be your finals MVP unless we see Jimmy Butler just absolutely go nuts rest of the way in the NBA playoffs, or sorry, NBA finals. But right now for me, if the books aren't going to adjust it and the amount of shot volume, the number of minutes that he's playing, and he's done it in both of the first 2 games, I'm going to go right back to it. So give me Bam over 32.5 points, rebounds, and assists here tonight as my best bet, Chris.
In no way I could talk you up. That number seems extremely short when this guy's averaging 20 and 10. And that's not even, him going over his assist prop that he's been over in both games as well. So no way I could talk you over that at all. If he has a big advantage, we know that Jokic wants to use most of his energy on the offensive end. And he has his hands full with Bam. Bam reminds me a lot of AD in the last series. He just can pass a little bit more, and they run their offense through him a little bit more than the Lakers do with Anthony Davis. But as far as the mid-range jump shooting, the ability to get to the paint, kind of draw some contact, the rebound, the couple, opportunities that he's going to get from offensive rebounds and, dunk tips and different things like that. Reminds me a lot of AD, and AD was able to find success against Jokic in the last round as well.
Yeah, Bam has also been a guy that he's been able to bring the ball up the court as well. I've seen it multiple times where they get the quick outlet pass, and Bam's a guy that's, really, or he's getting the outlet pass, he's bringing it into the offensive end of the court, and then at that point, he's making this decision whether to attack the basket or pass it off to a shooter. But Bam, I feel like he can be a little bit more aggressive if you see in the games where Jokic is guarding him and the paint is open. I wish that he would have just attacked a little more. And try to draw those fouls against the Joker. But he kind of just gets to the free throw line, kind of freezes, and then just dishes the ball out. But again, I'm not taking anything away from Bam. I mentioned that if the Miami Heat were going to have success in this NBA Finals, that it was going to have to be Bam Adebayo really having to step up. And at least in the first 2 games, he's done that. So hopefully that continues here tonight, at least for our bet's sake, that he has another big night for the Miami Heat. All right, Chris, man, that's going to do it for this edition of the Propcast. Anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
Nah, man, everyone enjoy the game. It should be a good one. I think I read a stat earlier, Munaf, that in the NBA Finals when games are tied 1-1, the winner of Game 3 goes on to win the series 80% of the time. So we should be in for a rock fight tonight. I think both of these teams will come out, scratching and clawing. And I'm just excited. Like I said, we haven't had basketball since Sunday, and it feels like it's been 2 weeks. So just excited for another game. So, everybody enjoy the game. Hopefully we can make a little money while we're doing it as well.
Yeah, pivotal. I think that when you talk about game 5s that are the pivotal games, I think game 3 are the pivotal ones as well. So hopefully it's another great game here tonight. We've had a great game 2. Game 1 was pretty good as well. So again, enjoy the basketball, enjoy the games. Hopefully we can put some more money in your guys' pockets here tonight with our player props. And we'll be back for game 4 for our player props as well. So definitely look out for that as well. Make sure to follow Chris on Twitter at ChrisBeCappinn, CaPPINN, 2 P's and 2 N's in there. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at SportsNerd824. More importantly, make sure to subscribe to the NBA Gambling Podcast account here if you haven't already on YouTube, and smash that like button for us before you guys get out of here. Like I mentioned, we'll be back for game 4. Look out for us then. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.